This episode is brought to you by First Cup Coffee Company. First Cup is a Christian-owned patriot coffee company that stands for core values, family, and building community across the nation. First Cup's freshly roasted beans are delivered in ground or whole bean texture, pods, and bulk. There are 11 roast profiles to choose from, each one named after a piece of this great country's history, like the Washington, named after America's first president, or my favorite, the John Hancock, named after the first founding father to proudly sign the Declaration of Independence. First Cup doesn't sell burnt coffee like Starbucks and all the other guys. All coffee is shipped within days of being roasted, and each subscription offers free shipping and the flexibility to cancel at any time. Go to firstcup.com and use the promo code FEARLESS and save an additional 10% on your order. And if you subscribe, save an additional 10% for the life of your subscription. Enjoy your first cup. I do. All right, welcome back. Steve, I want to talk about ESPN and Stephen A. Smith in conjunction together made a complete fool out of ESPN this weekend. Steve, I don't know if you saw this or caught all this, but I want to start with them showing Stephen A. Smith walking into the arena for the New York Knicks Pacers game. And they turned their whole countdown pregame show into a Knicks fan show with Stephen A. Smith playing the role as super Knicks fan / the Don Cherry of basketball. Now, hopefully, some of you, Don Cherry, you may not know him, but he was a hockey announcer from Canada that was kind of the face of the NHL. He was a buffoon. Had a cup of coffee as a player, coached in the NHL, though a little bit more credibility than Stephen A. Smith, but he was a character in hockey, and that's what Stephen A. Smith has turned into. But the entire focus of this game, pregame, it had nothing to do with the Pacers. It had nothing to do with sports fans. It had everything to do with building up the Stephen A. Smith brand and celebrating the New York Knicks. And so they started out, I want to play this clip of Stephen A. walking into the arena and ESPN celebrating it as if he were a player in this game.
He has experience in these games, having been to Game 7s twice before. That resolve, that poise, it comes with having been there, and that could be a difference maker. Consider this. Tyrese Halliburton will be playing in his first ever winner-take-all Game 7. Can the Pacers gut out what they haven't this series? A win in MSG. Well, if this man is in the building, dressed with the cool cream, we are counting you down to tip-off on ABC.
I got that was first, and then it just turns into a full-blown Knicks celebration, and so I want to play you this clip of Stephen A. on the sidelines or on court with Spike Lee. This is what is considered broadcasting excellence now at ESPN. Play the clip.
They ain't here right now. You understand what's at stake. It's been since 2000 that we've been in the conference finals. We've waited 24 years for this moment right here. OG Anunoby is back. Josh Hart's going to play. When you talk about Game 7, it comes down to grinding. It comes down to guts. It comes down to who would have been. Come up in here. Come up in here, Spike Lee. You come right here. Come right here. It's orange and blue skies, baby. This is what it's all about right here. This is what we've been waiting for right here. It's Game 7. This is what it's about. Get that hat on. Put it back on it. The New York Knicks, it's about grinding. It's about guts. It's about heart. That's what games are. This is what it's about. This is what we waited for right here. One game, 48 minutes. Orange and blue skies, baby. Orange and blue skies. That is what it's all about, Bob.
Will guard in Game 7. I'm going back to my seat.
Right.
Is that equal times for anybody from Indiana?
We ready.
The only thing here's The only thing I can think of what ESPN is doing, they're trying to justify paying Stephen A. Smith $20 million. So they've gone off in the fantasy world that Stephen A. Smith is just as important as the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks, and Stephen A. Smith's shtick, gimmick of pretending to be the biggest New York Knicks fan is just as important as the game because they have to justify paying this guy $20 million on his next contract. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. Remember that movie Whoopi Goldberg played when she became like the Knicks coach? Remember Eddie? I'm just like, I don't know where this is going. I remember when Spike Lee used to be the number one Knicks fan, or the most famous one. And he actually was a part of that rivalry with Reggie Miller and the Indiana Pacers and all the players, especially Jordan. They would make note of where he was. I remember Pippen one time throwing this monstrous dunk over Ewing. I think it was the year that Jordan didn't play. And it was in Chicago. And I think Pippen went over to Spike, because Spike used to travel with the team. I give Spike credit. He's a real fan. And Spike would become a central focus of a lot of these series and these games. And now you have an announcer acting like he's the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. It's such a bad look. I'd be embarrassed. Look, we all have our favorite teams, Jason. We all talk about them. But to insert yourself as part of the story, and look, I'd actually tell the ESPN producers, look, guys, let me do my job. I want to watch the game. I'll secretly cheer for who I want to. But I'm going to keep a modicum, at least a modicum of journalistic responsibility and impartiality and do my job. I would be embarrassed if I'm the network and if I'm Stephen A. Smith. But I will say this, based on the way the game went yesterday, I think the Knicks could have used Stephen A. Smith's 17 straight three-pointers off the bench. If they got him, then they may have been going on to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Steve, Kim, I'm sincere in my argument that Stephen A. Smith has so much power at ESPN and his connection to Dave Roberts, the executive, particularly now in the absence of Norby Williamson. They fired Norby Williamson, their last bit of sanity at ESPN. This is all part of a contract drive, that everything you're seeing from ESPN is about Stephen A. Smith trying to drive up his value and and Dave Roberts is helping him execute a strategy of like, Stephen A. Smith is so central to the NBA that we have to cover Stephen A. Smith as part of our game coverage because sports fans are so interested in that, and that's just how valuable Stephen A. is. And he's had the number one sports talk show for 12 straight years. His show, he thinks it's as ubiquitous as like the Howard Stern show was in its heyday or Rush Limbaugh was in its heyday. It's all a myth and a lie. First Take has a nice little television audience, and hats off to them, but it's not ubiquitous like that, and neither is Stephen A. Smith. And so I'm looking at Stephen A. and Dave Roberts execute a strategy of, it's a contract drive. That's all this is. This is just greed and irresponsibility on full display. And I'm actually glad that places like Awful Announcing and other places that normally just cape up for ESPN, Andrew Marchand, people are like calling out ESPN for like, what are they doing here? This is a game 7 of the NBA, and we're turning it into a fan show for Stephen A. Smith.
You know, it got me thinking, Jason. I don't think there's anything more irrelevant and self-important than the New York Knicks fans who really believe that the Knicks are like this central part of the NBA. They have not won a title, basically, in my lifetime. I think their last NBA title was, 70 or 71 when they beat the Lakers, or the Willis Reed season, or maybe right around that time when I was born. And then they've made 1 or 2 NBA finals, 94 and 99. And it's funny, for the past 25 years, every time there was a free agent, people would always insert the Knicks like, oh, they're in the running for this free agent. No, they've never been in the running for any of these guys. because it's not that much. Look, they're not the Lakers or Celtics. They happen to be in the number one media market, but the NBA has been just fine with the Knicks basically being incredibly mediocre. And here's another question that I have, though. If he's this big Knicks super fan, and I get it, Stephen A. travels a lot. He's a very busy individual who works very hard at various platforms and jobs. But how many games does he actually go to as a fan? I'm seriously, he makes a lot of money. He can probably find time. Does he ever actually just sit down and go to a game? I mean, we're acting like he's Jack Nicholson and his best buddy, Lou Adler, who are the number one Laker fans in the world. I give those guys a lot of credit because even though they have celebrity, especially Jack, it doesn't matter how good, bad, mediocre the Lakers are. Jack Nicholson, for 45, 50 years, has watched a lot of good and bad and in-between basketball. And his buddy Lou Adler, he's famous for wearing a beret, is with them every single game. And I'm like, wow, you are a devoted. I've actually heard that Jack Nicholson, when he was doing a lot of movies, he would put it into his contract that when the Lakers are playing, you have to send me tapes of their games. Like, that's how important the Lakers were to him, that he would find the time to say, hey, how did Magic do this night? And he would watch the games. That's a real fan. To act as if Stephen A. Smith is somehow the media version of Spike Lee, it's a totally dishonest agenda.
Obviously, I grew up in Indianapolis, lifelong Pacers fan. Used to be a hardcore Pacers fan. I mean, hardcore. I mean, yeah. I knew everything about the Pacers, would go to their draft parties and, all kinds of things. And I've had to admit, and it was probably around the time Paul George left the Pacers, I've just been less of a Pacers fan. Other than Halliburton and Miles Turner, it's hard for me to name who's on the roster. The same is basically true for Stephen A. Smith. We've got video of him talking about guys that even aren't on the roster, him pretending like they are on the roster. He's not a hardcore Knicks fan. It's all a gimmick and a shtick. And this isn't my bias as a Pacer fan showing up while I'm ripping him and ripping ESPN. It's just so inauthentic that it just drives me crazy. And what happened yesterday, this goes beyond Stephen A. Smith. This is my problem with ESPN. They're serving sports fans anytime, anywhere. And what fans? Maybe Knicks fans, but Pacer fans weren't serviced yesterday by ESPN. I want to play you a clip from Bob Myers, the former Golden State Warriors GM who now is on the NBA Countdown show. Malika Andrews asked him a direct question about the Indiana Pacers. Watch his response.
Michael Wilbon, I'm Malika Andrews. Bob, I want to start with you because you've been in this Game 7. The heart of a champion, Pascal Siakam, is really showing in this one. What stood out to you from the Pacers?
Well, a lot. Starting with OG couldn't go. I mean, that we happened a long time ago, it feels like, but I think a lot of people expected him to be a difference maker in this game. And so psychologically, you think you're whole, and then 4 minutes into the game, I think we all realized, great try by OG, you applaud the effort, but he didn't have it. So now the Knicks have to come back to the huddle and say, okay, he's not going to be here for us this afternoon. So now what are we going to do? So you bring in some of the subs. Brooks was great. But here's the thing. You look at the box score. You mentioned how well Indiana is shooting. But if you're the Knicks coaches, you come back to halftime, you go, well, we shot 47% from the field. 29 from three isn't great. We only had 2 turnovers, 15 assists, 11 to 13 from the line. 55 points. Pretty good half. But then you look at the anomaly of what the Pacers, and give the Pacers credit. No fear in their approach to this game, where the whole world, well, I thought the Knicks were going to win. Game's not over. I should have went against Stephen A. That was my own fault. Nobody made me do that.
All right, time.
We get time. But here's the thing. 15, and Wilbon, you covered the NBA for a long time. 15 is not a lot anymore. Now, if we were in 1985.
She asked about the Pacers, and he talked about OG Anunoby, I think is the guy's name, on the Knicks roster, and that he wasn't able to play that. But ESPN is making fools of themselves, and did yesterday put a clown suit on itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. During the Lakers glory days, which I call Showtime, the 80s, they had a set of fans that were very, very famous. Arsenio Hall used to go to a lot of games. I think Rob Lowe. Diane Cannon was a regular member of those games. And the Forum Club was like the spot. It was like the Studio 54 of the NBA. But you know, one thing I never saw, because that's when CBS had the games and they had the great intro, right? I never saw Arsenio Hall getting out of his limousine acting as if he's like the 13th man. I don't get it. I kind of be embarrassed. And here's another thing. And I know we're being old school journalists. Jason, as a writer or a broadcaster, I never want to be a part of the story. I really don't. My job is to cover the game or the fight, see what I see, report what I report, give commentary, but that's it. I don't ever want to be any part of the central focus of the actual event. That just simply is not our job.
Steve, did you tell Ryan Garcia's dad that? Have you informed him of that?
Well, yeah, I'm with you on that. But again, all I did was give an opinion. They brought me into the story, but it's not like I told whoever's broadcasting, hey, guys, when I walk into the arena, I take my press row seat. Make sure you get my good side here. I mean, come on.
If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a moment of Fearless.